Hello and welcome to Healing Minds, Changing Attitudes. I'm your host, Pamela Smith. This program is going to take a look at early childhood mental health and problems that can emerge in the first 5 years of life. Joining me to speak on this important topic are my guests, Dr. Jill Fussell, Associate Professor for the College of Medicine, Department of Pediatrics at UAMS, Dr. Sufna John, Post-doctoral Fellow for the College of Medicine, Department of Psychiatry at UAMS, Dr. Lorraine McKelvey, Associate Professor for the College of Medicine, Department of Family and Preventive Medicine at UAMS, and Dr. Nikki Conners-Burrow, Associate Professor for the College of Medicine, Department of Family and Preventive Medicine at UAMS. Thank you, ladies, for joining us for what has been, in my early research, now I guess all of about 4 or 5 days after learning about this topic, something that was really amazing to me, that you could actually diagnose and identify mental health concerns as early as infancy. So let's talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind, Dr. Burrow. Just weigh in on that.
Sure. Well, some people do find it sort of funny or odd to be talking about the mental health of infants, toddlers, or preschoolers. But really what we're doing is just recognizing that in those earliest years, we're really building the foundation that the child will have for their lifelong mental health. So sometimes we talk about it as social and emotional development. So when we talk about social skills, we're talking about the children's ability to begin to communicate their needs, to begin to make friends, to begin to learn how to get along with others. So a child with healthy social skills is going to know how to ask a friend to play. If they're working on a difficult task and they're beginning to feel frustrated, they know how to ask for help. And then when we talk about emotional skills, we're really talking about how young children begin to learn about their feelings. So they learn the words for their feelings. They learn that other people have feelings too. And very importantly, for sort of lifelong mental health, they learn how to sort of begin to control their feelings or express them in ways that are appropriate.
Sure.
So they might learn that it's okay to say I'm angry, but it's not okay to hit someone because I'm angry.
Absolutely.
And those are the skills that really we carry with us. We need those to do well in school. We need those to do well in the workplace and in our relationships with others. And if those skills are sort of not developing early, if they're really delayed or sort of off track, that's when we start to think about those early mental health concerns. We might begin to see really problematic behavior exhibited. If a child doesn't have some of the skills that they need, we might see aggressive behavior or them being overwhelmed by their emotions.
Well, the reason this is particularly fascinating to me is because obviously you guys have been engaged in a full-scale study for the last 4 years with the awarding of a grant. But it's fascinating to me because this is not a subject that we talk a lot about. Why is that? Is it something that people just had never thought about before, making those kinds of connections?
You know, I think as we've advanced with the ways we're able to study these things, we're able to study them younger and younger. And so I know even when I went through my graduate training, it wasn't a large focus on infancy and early childhood, which is why it's so important for us to be talking about these subjects now that we have more information. We're really able to intervene early.
And that's important because the earlier you intervene, hopefully you can help with child development in appropriate ways. Talk a little bit about the kinds of experiences, Dr. John, that would help promote good mental health, particularly when you're looking at younger children.
Sure. And so, you know, probably the most important thing to think about with development of social and emotional skills is that they occur within the context of a relationship. And probably the most important relationship that young children have is the relationships that they build with adults who care for them. And so one of the most important things we can do for our young children is to really help them to develop safe and secure relationships with the adults in their life. And that really helps them build generosity, empathy, things we'd like to see from them as adults.
So how does one, particularly when you're dealing with infants, how does one go about starting that relationship and ensuring that it is, in fact, the appropriate one and healthy?
Good news there is that it's not hard. It's a dance or kind of interaction that naturally seems to happen in willing and able, healthy individuals with a parent caregiver who's engaged in caring for this child, who the child is innately programmed to develop these social emotional milestones in ways that foster an attachment relationship. So it's an innate drive in an infant and a toddler to extend those cues to parents that they need comforting, they're hungry, they're, the different cries that they have. Kids are inherently programmed to attach to people. They have a social smile that's coming on board in the first few weeks to months, and they will quickly choose to preferentially give that to a known caregiver. Same thing with babbling. Once sounds come on board, they will vocalize more intensely and vigorously towards a known caregiver. And that stimulates a caregiver who's healthy and able to do that reciprocal bi-directional relationship that actually is, we're learning in more recent years, really at the brain-based level, very important for developing the architecture that's going to continue to support that brain to foster healthy relationships over time, which makes that brain very ripe for learning, because it's a brain that has learned, in a child that has learned that there's a safe haven they can come back to. They go out and experience life, come back and continue to learn new things and lay down connections in their brain that foster healthy development, versus a child who's not having that experience, and they are, in a sense, kind of programmed to make the connections that aren't going to foster healthy development, healthy relationships through time, potentially be increased risk for mental health problems at a brain-based level that's actually got much scientific backing behind it in more recent years.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment, but you said something that was interesting to me, and it sparked my thought about a video demonstration that is actually available. You talked about cues and connections. Let's visit a little bit about that in terms of what a baby or an infant sees, and how they make those connections and get those cues from even facial expressions, if you will.
Absolutely. And so babies communicate with us all the time, whether it's through vocalizations, yelling, screaming, crying. Babies really vocalize what their needs are, and how adults respond to those happen actually, as Jill was saying, very naturally. And so if a child is smiling, parents and trusting caregivers tend to smile back. They tend to make that direct eye contact. If children are reaching out to them, they tend to get closer to reach in with them. And so much of it is body language. And what we've been seeing is when children and infants don't get that reciprocity, so they reach out and no one reaches back, or they look up and smile and point to something and their caregiver doesn't look, they notice that. And it actually ends up having a potentially negative effect on their ability to interact with people. And the lucky thing is we know how to help. So we really know how to help people develop that relationship, even if in the beginning it wasn't as strong as it needed to be.
Well, and I referenced that video because we want to point people to the NAMI Arkansas website, so they will be able to see the video for themselves. Talk a little bit about what is actually occurring in that video, so when people see it, they will be able to understand.
Sure, and so the video is called the still face videos that we do. And basically what they bring in is a caregiver and an infant, and they'd first tell the caregiver, respond to your infant like you normally would. So the infant strapped in right in front of the caregiver's playing with her. So you'll see in the beginning, this mother in this video is really responding to her infant's cues. She's smiling, she's laughing, she's looking where the infant is pointing, and the infant is loving this attention. It's making her smile and feel safe to explore. Then what they ask the mom to do is turn around, and when she turns back, to just present a still face. So to not really respond to the cues that her infant is giving her. And what you'll see in the video, surprisingly, is how quickly her infant picks up on this change. And the infant shows so many signs of distress. So at first she tries all her tactics. I pointed before, maybe that'll work and mom will listen. Or I yelped before, and she starts to get increasingly distressed. And what we see there is infants really pick up on changes in their caregivers. And eventually at the end, they bring mom back so she's able to interact, and the infant bounces back like this, right back into that caring relationship. And so it really shows us what responsive parenting can look like for infants, and unfortunately, what unresponsive parenting could look like for infants.
Well, it took a lot of willpower on behalf of that mom. I know she was participating in a study, but to see her baby going through all those emotions and not react at all was amazing. Let's talk with you, Dr. McKelvey, about the kinds of experiences that actually make children more vulnerable to mental health concerns.
Absolutely. One of the things that I'll start by saying is that we know mental health is determined by an interplay between our genes and our environments. And what you'll typically hear people talk about is nature versus nurture. I think it's fair to say that we all now know that it's nature and nurture. I'm not going to talk so much about the genes and then the nature side. I'm going to talk more about the nurture side, because these are the things that we can impact in our environments. So as Dr. John was just saying, when you have a caregiver who's not very responsive to you, this sets up your brain to not expect to be able to expect the caregiver to react, and it hinders your emotional development. So the characteristics of families and environments that hinder children's development are things that hinder parents' ability to respond. Things like depression and things like being in an abusive relationship, also having a substance abuse problem, for example. There are also things that the child directly experiences without the caregiver. So if there's conflict in the home, arguing, that negatively impacts the child. The direct influence of poverty and being hungry, for example, as well as things that happen at school, like bullying, and things in the neighborhood like being exposed to violence. The good news is we know that as long as the caregiver is responsive, as long as there's a positive relationship for the child somewhere, that those children tend to excel, and it protects them from the negative things. So for example, if your child is in a high quality childcare and there's conflict at home, the effects of the conflict at home are a little bit less. If you live in a risky environment, in a risky neighborhood, and your parents are very supportive and cohesive, the effects of that are less for depression and anxiety, as well as aggression and risk-taking behavior all the way out to adolescence.
Well, and if you will, because you were sharing that you actually do home visits to help with some of those coping and training mechanisms. Talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. So there has been a rather large policy shift, and we see funding at the federal level for federal and state level, actually, for supports for families and things that promote social emotional development in children. And so here in Arkansas, we have funding for about 7,500 families across the state in services. A home visitor will come out and support everything from helping mom understand about prenatal development to helping the mother of a 4-year-old know how to get her child ready for school. And these services are typically weekly, sometimes bi-weekly, where a person will come out into the home and be support. They
will come to the home and be support, and then offer some additional opportunities for families to learn and grow.
Absolutely. And the services aren't available all over the state, but they are available in most counties. The different programs, not necessarily all of them. And there's a website that we'll show at the end where you can go to find out what's available in your community.
Well, that's great to know that. You know, I wanted to revisit the grant business for just a moment, because this was also very interesting to me when I looked at the statistics. 7,000 Arkansas children under the age of 5 are exposed to some sort of traumatic stress each year. That's a lot of kids. Dr. Burrow?
It is a lot of kids. We have a lot of kids that are experiencing significant risk factors. We have far more children than that that are in poverty. And so the impact of that is that 10 to 20% of kids by preschool age will be showing some significant mental health concerns. When we screen in our pre-K programs, we see that about 15% screen positive for behavior concerns.
Okay, well, I don't want to interrupt you, but
Sure.
help our folks at home understand. So how do you know the difference when it's, being a typical
Right.
terrible too,
Right.
or versus a mental health
Right.
concern.
So that's where our screening tools can really come in handy. And there are screening tools that parents can fill out, that teachers can fill out, that help us sort through, of course, all kids are going to tantrum. All toddlers are going to bite. Preschoolers are going to, not be compliant all of the time. But these screening tools can help us sort out what's sort of normal for their age and when are we getting really into sort of the abnormal range. When should we start to be concerned? When should we start to think about a referral for some supports? When might we want to think about getting a teacher some help? So those tools can really help us sort it out.
Great. You wanted to add something?
I was just going to say that the screening is identifying an area of concern, and then I think it's trying to help families connect with somebody who can help them kind of ferret through that and figure out what the underlying problem is. Hard part is, in a lot of the initial steps that parents will take will be visiting with a primary care doctor to talk about these issues. It's hard in a primary care visit to fully screen all the environmental risks that might be going on, so having psychology input is important. Going to the primary care doc is a good first place. A doctor, it's appropriate to expect that a doctor can ferret through the typical, atypical developmental presentations, identify social emotional problems, can provide some initial practical parenting advice, and also refer to some of these evidence-based programs. But also I'd make a comment there just to say that there are other, we've talked about the pendulum of environment, nature, nurture, and there are some social emotional problems that we wouldn't fully point towards environmental influences. There are some kind of more hardwired neurological genetic issues that can lead to social emotional problems such as autism and developmental delays. So having some trained eye to kind of help families figure out which direction to go, starting with a primary care doc or psychologist in the community is a good place to start.
Well, that's very important to note. Now, you hear in terms of older people or adults that there is stigma associated with seeking mental health help. How does that relate to younger children? Are you seeing the same kinds of concerns from parents who don't want to readily say my child has a problem?
The great thing about starting early is we don't necessarily have to deal in diagnoses. We can look very early just for signs of concern, and then being clear with the parent that we're not doing anything to the child. This is more about how we support the adults in the child's life so that they know what to do to be a support for that child, whether that's the mom, the dad, grandma, or the teacher. And a lot of times it's not what people think about when they think about mental health treatment. We're just a lot of times talking about how to manage a classroom with a teacher, or tips for interacting with your child at home. And so I think, a lot of times it can happen in natural settings. It doesn't always have to happen in the therapist's office. These can be supports that home visitors provide. These can be supports that teachers provide. So we have lots of ways to support young children's mental health, and I think that helps address some of the concerns around stigma. And then, of course, though, I think Dr. John can speak to, how we talk to parents when maybe there does need to be that next step of a referral to a mental health therapist.
So, Dr. John, how would you talk to a parent? What would you say to lead them in that direction?
I think all of us can agree up here that we might be, experts in early childhood mental health, but you're the expert on your own child. And so a lot of times for parents, they have gut instincts. They have these ideas that, something's not right, or my child's behavior has changed a lot since it was before, or I've raised another child and my other child didn't go through the things that this child is going through. And so what I usually tell parents is trust that gut. Get it checked out by someone who can help you navigate that. And then ultimately, treatment is going to include you as a major part of this treatment because you're the most important person in your child's life. How could they get better if you were not involved? And so we talk a lot with parents about what a brave step it is to make, because you're right, there is some stigma still around treating mental illness. But more than that, how they're setting their child up on a different path and a better path, and maybe a path that they were not afforded that opportunity when they were young. And so I think it's a way for parents to feel empowered versus feeling like they're being labeled and judged.
And also, probably it's good to know that there are support groups and that they are not alone. Well, you talked about the pendulum. We talked about, the concerns. Let's talk about some of the resources in the time that we have left. We want to make sure that people do feel empowered when they walk away from this program, to know that there are resources and services available for parents who might need them.
Yeah, so the good thing is that we know what promotes positive development. I talked about home visiting. We also know that high quality childcare is important. When you're looking at high quality childcare, you're looking for things like low teacher-child ratios. So you want more adults to fewer children. You want to see a continuity in care. You want to see the same caregiver providing care to your child every day. You want to see a developmentally appropriate curriculum. And you want your qualifications of your providers to be high. Excuse me. We know that high quality childcare provides opportunities for children to develop to their most optimal. And we have federal programs that actually support not only the child, but support the parents in early Head Start and Head Start. We have state programs like Arkansas Better Chance for School Success that serves preschoolers.
And I think we have the web address for that. If we could go ahead and put that on the screen. That's great to know, and continue.
Well, and we also have a voluntary quality rating and improvement system here in Arkansas called Better Beginnings, where child care providers offer to provide services better than minimum licensing. So you can look for either the federally or state-funded programs, as well as Better Beginnings programs.
And one thing that we sometimes tell parents is there's not enough quality child care to go around for all Arkansas children, especially when you're talking about looking for care for infants and toddlers. So what we try to emphasize is what we want parents to really look for. So if you're going to pick out a child care program that will support the mental health of your young child, it's not about the fanciest toys, and it's not about the most expensive playground set. You're really just looking for a teacher for your child that is nurturing. So you're going to go in that classroom and you're going to observe the caregiver that your child is going to be with, and you're looking for them to be on the floor playing with the kids. You're looking to see that they enjoy being with the kids, that they're talking, that they're interacting in positive ways, that there's a warm tone, and that tells you your child is going to be nurtured there. And we've heard about how that's going to support their brain development and how those relationships are going to give them a strong foundation for lifelong mental health. And so that's the sort of the key ingredient of quality that we tell parents. You got to go look for that. You can let some of the other things slide if you need to, but that's got to be there.
Absolutely.
And I would say, add on to that, empowering them that, as I was mentioning, it's a natural thing that they don't have to have at home. The iPads and all the things that we see now out in entertaining kids. Just simply the facial expressions, interactions, social responsive smiles, playing with their kids is actually helping to build healthy brain development.
Well, that's awesome to hear. So if we want to leave maybe just a couple of nuggets for takeaways, what would you say to parents before we end our program, Dr. John?
I would say to parents that, as we were talking before, trust your instincts. It doesn't hurt to get someone to take a look. If you're curious or you're wondering if something that we've said kind of strikes a chord with you and you wonder, I wonder if this could help my child, to feel empowered to do that. And then recognize how important you are in your child's life and how the interactions that you have with your children set them up for success. And how if you're worried that maybe I haven't been able to do this in a way that's been effective for my child, that we have ways to help with that as well.
And it's very important that people know that there is help and there is hope. And so it's important, I think, that we share that with them tonight.
I'd also like to make sure that people know that if this topic was interesting to them, there's a place where they can learn more. So we have an Arkansas Association for Infant Mental Health, and I believe that website is going to be on the screen. We have monthly educational sessions that are broadcast out across the state. We have an annual conference, and you can learn more about that on the website. So if this was intriguing, come learn more.
Well, I do believe it was intriguing because, as I said to you, I was fascinated to know that you could actually start learning more about even the developmental stages for your child's mental health at infancy. So thank you very much for sharing this very important and timely topic with all of us. We want to remind you about some important information that you can access on the website to find high-quality early childhood education programs in Arkansas. Remember Arkansas Better Beginnings, and you can also get additional information on NAMI Arkansas's website. Thank you again for watching, and we hope this helps you lead healthier lives.
Healing Minds, Changing Attitudes is underwritten by the Arkansas Mental Health Research and Training Institute.